Last time I talked about a singular game on this channel, we looked at Mini Shoot Adventures, a game which answers the age-old question of what would happen if Zelda was a Zeppelin. To stay on the theme of unexpected infusions, today I wanted to take a look at Another Crab's Treasure, a game which sets out to answer what if Davy Dark Souls was a crustacean. Fair warning, the answer is so shocking that your mind may never recover. Another Crab's Treasure is the second game developed by the aptly named Aggro Crab. Their last game was a roguelike called Going Under. I didn't play it, but I do appreciate the ironic use of the corporate art aesthetic. I personally wouldn't have played this game either if it weren't for seeing some interesting trailers for it. Even then, I needed to get psyoped by multiple sites and YouTubers, including it in their best of the year lists, for me to actually slap down my buckaroos and give it a go. And not a minute too soon, because I'll be riding this hot trend straight to View City, USA. Frankly, I couldn't resist the pitch of a humorous Souls-like set under the sea. I mean, if SpongeBob isn't gonna do it, then somebody has to. They already got 99% of the way there with that episode where Pearl and Mr. Krabs used blood magic to homunculus themselves, so Nickelodeon really has no excuse for holding out on us. I think humorous Souls games are a seriously under-tapped angle. The only other one I can think of is the last hero of Nostalgaia. Otherwise, most Souls games are gritty and deadly serious experiences, with the only humor coming from that trash you call a build. Homie, what the fuck is that? After playing the game, I can say that it is funny and it is kinda a Souls game, but I think that description is a little bit misleading. What is a Souls game? It's a simple question with no easy answer. Like pretty much any genre, the Souls-like genre is a complete mess of different definitions for different people. Some people say it needs to be hard, some say it needs to emphasize melee combat, some say it's about the world design, while other people say it's all about the storytelling. After doing some real soul searching, I think that the Souls genre can be best described as a rat maze that ends after coital relations with a blender. By this definition, Another Crab's Treasure is a Souls-like. Despite the cutesy look, the game can get pretty hard and there are areas that feel a little bit like going through a maze, but that's just the tip of the Souls iceberg. There's bonfires that are scattered around the world. These can be used as checkpoints as well as a way to level up different stats. The way to level up those stats is through currency. That currency can be lost just like in Dark Souls, and just like Dark Souls, if you lose the currency out in the field, you can go back to where you died and recover it. There's a big blacksmith that will upgrade your weapon to do more damage, and there's these fishing poles which will act as checkpoints to speed up backtracking through areas. The combat system also follows many Souls staples. The lock-on camera is here, timed rolling and backstepping are here, poise breaking is here, special abilities are here, someone call my boy Dr. Doof cause fucking Perry is here, and of course boss health bars the size of Mr. Hand's last ride are here too.
Just the right height, no bucket is required.
Despite all these elements, the game doesn't really have that Souls-like feeling, probably because for every part Another Crab's Treasure borrows from the Souls games, it brings something unique to the table. If Another Crab's Treasure was just another Souls game, I probably would have set it down and played something more interesting, like Minesweeper. If you haven't checked out the new Battle Pass, there's some crazy shit this season, bro. Luckily, this game effortlessly mixes mechanics and ideas from other games to great success, most of the time. From the earliest moments, platforming cements itself as a significant portion of the game. You can't have your MC hitting the motherfucking wahoo in the first 90 seconds and not give me a little jump challenge from time to time. The platforming is used just the right amount. Nearly every level has a few platforming sections, with some going a little bit harder on it than others. There's also some optional platforming challenges that can get you some good rewards that the lazy no-jumper crabs simply couldn't get, so it's worth it to jump around like a drunk guy after his poverty franchise finally wins a game. This jumping around and exploring is also a good way to find helpful stat boosts. There's items that boost this, which is pretty much just your magic meter. There's also items that boost your health if you collect enough of them, kind of like a piece of heart. No matter how hard you try, you'll never be twinked out enough to be him. Sorry, little bro. The armor system is also unique to this game, and I thought that it was a really fun twist on that kind of idea. There's still weight classes like any Souls game, which mainly impacts your ability to dodge, with the lightweight stuff being fast and nimble, and the heavy stuff being slow and causing your dodges to look like jumping on a dry slip and slide. Naturally, since you're a hermit crab, these armors are all different types of items. I was consistently entertained by the designs and the items that they chose for the shells. Everything from party poppers to the freshly skinned skull of your enemies is available as a shell. Each of the shells also has its own set of traits, providing different layers of protection and a special ability. Some of the shells also come with buffs to certain stats. You can slap stickers on them, which have all kinds of effects too. Some provide boosts to a certain stat, while others can do things like spawn a helper or even give you an extra life. I was a little bit bummed that the sticker system doesn't actually put stickers on the shell itself, but considering the amount of stickers and the amount of shells, it's completely understandable why it doesn't. Just don't get too attached to any one shell because they break after taking enough damage, leaving you without the buffs and defenses of the shell, but also locking out those sticker buffs, which are extremely strong. It's a fun system that led me to try out many different shell types when in most Souls games, I just pick the best stat armor for whatever role type I'm aiming for. I can say that I didn't use the shell as often as I probably should have. In every other Souls game, I try and dodge attacks over any other option. My first FromSoft game was Bloodborne, so I played these games aggressively, like a pit bull in a preschool. I never really got into the sword and board playstyle of blocking attacks, so it felt weird to do here. Over time, I got used to it, but even then, it didn't match my normal playstyle.
It's over, Anakin! I have the high ground!
It's super worth adjusting your playstyle to do it because it's not only the easiest option to negate damage, it's also super strong. Overall, the gameplay is very good, but there are some parts of the game that I'm a little bit more mixed on. I don't like to be the guy that points out a lack of polish in a game, especially an indie game, but there's enough of that here that I just can't ignore it. There's some weirdness going on with the world geometry. There's a certain level of this going on in pretty much any game, but having this going on in the middle of a main pathway is really hard to ignore. There were other moments where I was able to go through objects that I shouldn't be able to. Sometimes that object was the floor itself. There were also areas that I got stuck and needed to use the menu and krill myself just to escape. The lack of polish continues with some real jank going on in the physics. There were multiple times where the game would send me to the fucking moon like NASA pretended to do in 69. It happened in this boss fight with the shrimp, and I was able to grab the item you're supposed to get as a reward for beating him without beating him. It felt cool to do it, but I don't understand how a bug this big and this common wasn't caught. I think I was able to do it 3 or 4 times with the shrimp, and it happened a few other times and places as well. My other mixed feelings are more about design decisions themselves. Visually, I like the game a lot. The art style is nice. The characters and enemies all look nice, and I really like the levels. Each level is fun to look at, and they all really embrace the bright and colorful underwater aesthetic that the game is going for. However, I think that the actual level design is just not that interesting. Some of these levels feel very linear. So linear that the shortcuts don't make any real sense. To me, a shortcut kind of implies you'll be going back through the area later, either for exploration or as a means of getting across the world, but that's just not the case here. The most I ever returned to any area was twice, and that was just to look for missing crystals like in a collectathon platformer. The world does not feel interconnected in the same way a game like Dark Souls 1 does. It feels much more like Ocarina of Time, with the game being centered around a large hub, which has its own discrete levels at the ends of the corners. It's not bad world design, but since the game was pitched to me as Crab Dark Souls, it's worth noting that the world and level design doesn't really follow that kind of idea. Both the individual levels and the world in general feel more like a normal platformer than a Souls game. As much as I liked the armor system, I did not care for the weapon system, or rather, the lack of one. There's only one weapon in the entire game. The weapon weapon gets stronger with better stats if you upgrade it, but it does not change in a gameplay sense. It would have been fun to find more weapons because experimenting with different weapons is a big part of what I love about the Souls series. It gives them a lot of replayability when combined with different stat builds. Speaking of stat builds, the stat leveling is another place that this game felt a little bit undercooked. There's only 4 stats in the entire game: Vitality for health, Resistance for shell strength, ATK for, I'll let you take a guess. Did you guess America's Test Kitchen? You did? Well, congratulations. You have brain damage. Finally, there's MSG for magic, which I absolutely love. Very funny. Having only 4 stats is great for simplicity, but I found myself just pumping health and attack before throwing points at MSG, which is pretty much just magic attack. Resistance felt like a waste because the shells felt so beefy already, and MSG felt like a waste early because none of the abilities really rustled my jimmies. None of these things are actually bad design or anything. Well, missing a few of the bugs is, but if Bethesda can do it, who am I to stop the indies? They're just not really what I expected or how I saw the game being talked about. Once I stopped thinking of the game as a Souls-like or a Souls-light or Pixar's feature film Soul only in theaters March 26th, I was able to enjoy the game a lot more. Really, the game is closer to a PS2 or GameCube action-adventure game, which is extremely high praise coming from me. There's some Souls elements, but I wouldn't really consider it one of those games. It would be a really good entry point to the genre because it has a few of the mechanics and is generally a lot easier than the normal Souls games. But if you're looking for the next Dark Souls 1 because those cowards at FromSoft refuse to make a true sequel to Dark Souls 1, I swear to God, Miyazaki, get those toes out your fucking mouth and return to tradition, you son of a bitch. Don't sell me a mod, bro. I've played the mod already. I don't need it. I need Dark Souls 2, the true Dark Souls 2, not whatever the fuck this shit is. Hold on, what were we talking about? Oh yeah, this game has a story. Normally, I don't talk about stories in games because my favorite games don't put much emphasis on them. Sure, games like Dota, Counter-Strike, or Terraria have lore and a story, but I'm willing to bet most people aren't there for that. The most interesting story in Dota is the mystery of the insta-pick mid 0 and 12 Flame Lord, and despite that story playing on repeat hundreds of times a day for years, I'm not sure we'll ever really solve that mystery. Another Crab's Treasure is a game that does put a lot of emphasis on its story, and for the most part it's pretty good. There's some voiced characters, a couple of cutscenes, and plenty of world building from NPCs scattered around the world. The story starts with some land Chad demanding taxes from our boy Krill here. After he takes Krill's shell, we get to control the crustacean on an adventure to get his shell back. It's a decent enough premise. I mean, Mario's been rocking the same type of idea for at least a few decades, but it's a bit nonsensical. The whole story could have been avoided if Krill simply shouted "squatters' rights" when the tax shark attempted to repossess his shell, or if he used his Pillman 9mm to send the shark to the great beyond. This massive plot hole didn't bother me because the game is pretty silly. There's a bunch of fish puns and goofy characters all throughout the sea, but the game still tackles serious topics while interjecting this humor, something that's difficult to do well, and I think this game manages to pull it off. I liked the story more as it progressed. Early on, it felt more like a vehicle to throw out some corny jokes, a bit like this dude's YouTube channel, but as it went on, the story got surprisingly heartfelt. It tackled issues as personal as finding purpose in life, all the way to societal issues like pollution and greed, without ever feeling preachy or overbearing with the messaging. It is worth noting that this game might not be super appropriate for children. The themes can get pretty heavy, and some more big picture stuff would probably go right over their heads. Also, there's a boss that has a magic wand massager that caused Krill to crabgasm, and there's some foul language, and there's nothing worse than bad fucking language. That bullshit is completely fucking unacceptable. I also liked the way that the story wrapped up. It felt like everything came full circle, and I was pretty satisfied with the ending. And while you do have a cool final battle to end the game, I did decide it would be more canonically accurate to finish the game this way.
Come on, do it! Hit me! Don't be a coward! No, Krill, wait! Don't put that on!
So what happens when Davy Dark Souls becomes a crab? He learns about the horrors of corporate greed in platforms like SpongeBob SquarePants. I told you it was mind-blowing. All in all, I would give the game a solid 4 out of 5 star fish. If you're looking for a game that has Souls elements without the aggressively dark atmosphere of a Souls game, I can say that this will probably scratch that itch. Or if you're looking for a platforming game that has combat that isn't complete ass cheeks, this will probably fit that niche too. I enjoyed the story, the visuals, and the way the game played, which is about all you can ask for $30 and 19 hours of your time. If you're a gay fish and you need something to play while waiting for multiplayer Elden Ring, I'd say give Another Crab's Treasure a try.
That's right, we're Japanese.